Welcome to the Clinician Researcher Podcast. I'm your host, Tia Wimina, and what an absolute pleasure. What an absolute pleasure to be talking with you today. Thank you so much for joining. Today, I'm talking about setting the thermostat for your academic environment. And I'm talking about different strategies that may work and strategies that leave you a little bit more challenged in your ability to set the thermostat. And I will tell you that this particular episode and the inspiration from it for it comes from a conversation I had with one of my mentors recently. And she talked about the importance of setting the thermostat for your own home. And specifically, actually, she was talking about the fact that, you can worry about the temperature or you can air condition your home. He's like, your job is not what the temperature is on the outside. Your job is the air conditioning in your home, is setting the temperature in your home. And I just remember from that conversation, I literally had it was one of those epiphanies, or actually, it was more like a mind blowing moment. Like, oh, this is so profound. And for that reason, I thought to record a podcast episode on the importance of setting the thermostat for your academic environment. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was caught up in this place, which to be honest, I'm caught up in often. And I try not to be caught up in it. And part of how I do that is to stay busy and stay out of these conversations. But I got caught up. And what did I get caught up in? I got caught up in one of those conversations where we talk about how everything is falling apart and going to hell in a handbasket and everything is just not working. And to be honest, in healthcare, there are a lot of those moments where we can sit and just lament the challenges that are happening around us. And I work very hard to try to stay out of those conversations because they weigh me down and then I really can't move forward because I'm so overwhelmed by the badness. And this was one of those where, you can't get away from the conversation because it just feels so right. And there's just so much energy and you really want to have the conversation and you want resolution to what you're talking about, but there's no resolution. No matter what, that conversation always ends in you feeling badly. So that's why I try to avoid it, but I wasn't able to successfully. But anyway, this particular analogy of the house and the condition outside and setting the thermostat in your own environment made me start thinking about our academic environments. And in reality, goodness, there's so much that's wrong. And if we could just list all of it, we would be completely overwhelmed. And actually, if we only just shared a little bit of what's going on in that academic environments, we would be, it's kind of demoralizing actually sometimes. And so I thought about what are some of the conditions that can challenge your ability to set the thermostat of your academic environment and some situations or some scenarios that enhance your ability to do that. And what am I talking about when I'm talking about setting the thermostat of your academic environment? It's saying what is conducive for you. So we live in this big ecosystem, and there's a sense, especially when we first get started, that we've got to just go with the flow. It's like status quo. We're just doing what everybody else is doing, or we just do what we're told to do. And then in some areas, we're finding that, there's a rub. It's like, I know this is what they told me to do, but it's not working for me. But we want to be team players and we want to just, we want to do what everybody else is doing, or we want to do what we're told to do. And so we're just going with it. But boy, it's not really working for us. And we're like, oh, I don't like the way it's working. And we're afraid. We're afraid to try to change things, even though changing things means that it works better for us. And we're afraid because we're like, well, they want us to do this. And if we change anything, it will be frowned upon. And one of the things we don't realize is that our thriving is more important than our conformity. And to be honest, people make the rules and they make the rules for different reasons, but they don't make the rules to stifle you. Or they don't make the rules to take away your ability to think or your ability to be innovative or your ability to create. Because the better you do, the better they do. In any environment, when people thrive, they bring their best selves to the table. They are more creative, they're more amazing. And so, in reality, even though it would seem that the environment is asking you to conform, in reality, the environment wants you to create your own thing in the midst of the rules. And so, part of our strategy is to think about how do we understand the rules so well that we know when they can be broken or how they can be successfully broken, right? And sometimes we do it successfully and sometimes we don't. But in reality, continuing to shape our environments so that we can thrive is important. Because the alternative, the part where we're in conformity and we just hate life, oh my gosh, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't serve anybody. You're miserable, and they also like are not happy to work with you because when you're miserable, you look bad, you have this attitude about you, you don't even do your work very well. And so being miserable in your environment is not okay. It doesn't serve you and it doesn't help other people. And so you're working to create an environment that serves you is your responsibility and your obligation to the people who work with you. It really is. If you're thinking, oh no, my institution doesn't want me to do anything outside of this box, it's like, no, I don't know who the institution is, but in reality, the more miserable you are, the worse the institution does. And so you're living and enjoying the environment you're in is so important and it's worth fighting for. And at the end, sometimes people say, we want you to change. We want you to, make things work for you. And the moment you start doing it, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We want you to make things work for you, but not like that. Yes, even though there's opposition, the reality is when you're happy, when you're thriving, everybody around you does better. And so it is worth the battles and it is worth the going through the challenges to get to the other side where you thrive, you're doing great, and everyone's like, "Yep, it was because she was in my division. I made it happen." They'll take the credit as long as you succeed. They'll take the credit. They might fight you on route to success, but as soon as you succeed, everybody backs down and says, "Yeah, I was there from the beginning." And so it's your responsibility. It's my responsibility to make the environment work for us. Okay, so I want to talk about 5 conditions that affect your ability to set your own academic thermostat. That's where you're creating an environment in which you thrive. And the first condition is homelessness. Okay, stay with me here. And by homelessness, I mean you don't have a place of your own. When you don't have a place of your own, when you're homeless, right? You probably might live outside. Maybe you live under a bridge, or maybe ride the train at night. And you know what I mean? Like homelessness is a condition where you are subject to the temperature, the outside temperature. There is no air conditioning when you're homeless. And what does it mean? What am I thinking of when I say homelessness in the academic environment? I'm saying, well, you don't actually have your own thing. You just kind of are going with the flow. It's kind of the way most of us are when we first come in, especially when we come in without a plan. I've met people now who come into the academy and they're like, I'm here day one. I already have a grant that I've written. This is going to be my K. And I just salute them because I'm like, wow, I wish I was so much further along when I came to my faculty position. I had no idea. So I was one of those homeless people in the sense that I had no academic plan. It wasn't solid. I was just kind of open, like, okay, yeah, what do I do again? Sure, okay, go there, I'll do it. I just was one of those people who didn't have a plan. And so that's what I'm likening to academic homelessness, where it's like you don't really have a research program. You don't have a plan for a research program yet. You're just kind of going with the flow. They say take 6 clinics. You're like, sure. And they're like, well, we need someone to do 3 more. And you're like, wow, I can only do 8. And they're like, you'll figure it out. And somehow you do. Yep. That's where the temperature is always affecting you. The temperature on the outside is the temperature on the inside. When it's blazing hot outside, it's blazing hot for you. When it's freezing cold outside, it's freezing cold for you. And so you're getting frostbitten often, you're getting sunburned often because you have no home. And this especially is true when you have no mentor, no sponsors. You're just by yourself. And many of us in our early faculty career find ourselves in this homeless situation where we're just trying to make it work. We have no resources, we have nothing. We're just doing it all. And so that does affect your ability to build to set the thermostat for a temperature that's conducive to you because there is no structure over you by which you can do that. And so what am I saying at the end of all of this is that homelessness is bad. And to be honest, I think within the academy we're working to help people find mentors and help people get connected. But what I'm saying is that it's why it's important for you to find a home, find a plan, find a program, just decide this is what I want to do and do the work that is necessary to decide that so that you're no longer homeless. And so I'm saying find your scholarship home, find the program you're building and come out of status quo where you're just doing whatever you're told or just going with the flow. Going with the flow is akin to just being subject to whatever the temperature of the environment is. It's your temperature. And most of the time it's unbearable. Okay. The second condition is where you have a mentor. So now you're no longer homeless, you're crashing on somebody's couch. Now, here's the thing, depending on the kind of mentor you have, you might have your own house, right? You may have a cottage in the back if your mentor has a huge home. Okay, this is a metaphor. Go with me here. Your mentor has a huge home and they're so kind and generous. They build a house for you in the back and they're like, here's your home. Mi casa es su casa. You might have that scenario. Most of us do not. You might also have a scenario where your mentor is like, "Hey, I'm not flush enough to build you a house in the back, but hey, you can have the guest room." And that's not bad. You have the guest room, you're free to come and go, that kind of thing. Or some of you have a mentor where it's like, "Yeah, I don't even have a guest room for you. How about you crash on the couch?" And so there you go. You're able to crash on the couch. Or some of us have a mentor where it's like, you know what? Here's a sleeping bag. You can sleep in the living room when the lights are out, right? So anyway, there are different instances of how you live in your mentor's academic home. But here's the thing. Somebody's setting the thermostat and it's not you. And so mentors are amazing. Everybody needs mentors, and I hope you have multiple mentors. And I know that some people are looking for the one big bad mentor who like does everything. Most people don't have it. We're looking for it. It's the elusive mentor that doesn't exist, but whatever. You at least have one or two mentors that for whatever reason you have a relationship and you can think about your relationship and think about, do I have a cottage built for me in the back or am I roughing it on the sleeping bag at the end of the day when the lights are out, right? But no matter the situation of your mentoring situation, and that, depends on your mentor, how long they've mentored and how many resources they have access to. Who else is in their mentoring home, right? Maybe you're there and you get the guest room, but there's somebody who has the cottage out back because they've been there longer, they're more senior, that kind of thing. But again, somebody's setting the thermostat and it's not you. And it's great. Everything is great as long as you and the mentor agree and the temperature of the environment is conducive to you. But if for whatever reason there was a conflict and you're like, hey, mentor, you're setting it 78 degrees and I prefer 72. Ooh, okay, there it is. It's a challenge. And to be honest, for those of us who have great mentors, you do get a point in your career to a point in your career where it's like, we used to agree on the temperature. We were always cool at 68 degrees. And all of a sudden, you seem to be having more hot flashes or something because you're at 64 and I'm still at 68. And when those times of conflict come, sometimes it is the sign that, hey, maybe it's time to get your own place. Because you're lucky if your mentoring environment is set up in such a way that it speaks to you and the things that are important to you in terms of like making it conducive for your growth. And for those of us who have the perfect mentoring or at least near perfect mentoring situations, it's the way it is. You both gel, they have the temperature set at a temperature that you like. It's conducive to your growth and development. You have a great time, they have a great time. But whenever there's a gap, whenever there's a challenge, then it's an opportunity to think about, well, how do I set the thermostat of my own home, of my own environment? And you might start to think about getting your own environment, right? But it also may be that in this mentor's environment, you have your own room, or maybe you have your own cottage, and you can set the thermostat for your own little space, and you're able to get along for a long time. And so, depending on the kind of mentoring situation you are in, it may be where you and your mentor gel so much that it doesn't matter what the temperature of the mentor's house is set at, it always works for you. Or it may be that you have enough of a space within your mentor's big program that you're setting the temperature right there. But whatever happens, you really are dependent on the mentor, right, to supply the resources you need to make things conducive for you. And if you have a great relationship, it's great. And if you don't, then you might think about moving into your own place sooner. Okay. Number 3 is getting your own rental. And when I'm talking about getting your own rental, it's like, okay, it's time to get my own place. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about the external environment, right? There are so many challenging things in academia, and in your own conducive environment, sometimes you're able to be shielded from it, especially when you have a mentor who's fitting the bill, right? You don't know that outside it's 100 degrees blazing because in here it's 68 degrees and it's so cool and you're enjoying it, you're having a great time. But what you don't know is how big the bill is, right? How much it costs to be able to make that kind of investment so that the temperature is cool relative to the super hot temperature outside. It takes resources to do that. But you begin to become familiar the moment you get your own place where you're like, I'm renting, but I'm paying the bills. And it's like, whoa, the kind of energy costs to be able to, like, change my environment internally. It's significant when there's such a gap between the external environment and my internal environment. And this is important. Again, I'm talking about like your scholarship home. You've decided this is my direction. This is what I want to do. You're applying for funding. You have resources that support you to some extent. Getting your rental is kind of like saying, Mentor, I love you and you be close by, but I'm going to be here now starting to work on building my own environment and having my own mentees within my own research program, right? Or within my program of scholarship. But now you begin to feel the pinch because it's like, whoa, so maybe I can't do 68 degrees because it costs a lot. Why don't I go for 78? And so yeah, the gap between 100 degrees and 78 not so bad. I can afford that, And so we're starting to make these trade-offs, but we're deciding, right? And one of the things that's important to note is that you may get to a point in your career where you have to ask, is it worth this big gap between the external temperature and what's going on in my immediate environment? Does it cost too much to be able to cool my house down to 68 degrees when the external temperature is always hot at 100? Or do I need to move to a more temperate climate where the gap is only about 4 or 5 degrees? And I say that to say that we're making decisions in our careers all the time. And sometimes the external environment is so toxic, you have to think about, okay, is it worth the energy that it's taking to continue to air condition my own environment just so that I can stay healthy and happy and thriving in the midst of an external environment that's challenging. And that's something that you have to think about. It may be that you're like, well, okay, I'll come up a few degrees. I'll come up to 80 degrees and I can bear that. And maybe you can, but it is important to think about how much is it costing you to thrive in that environment? Are you able to at all? Or are you just kind of barely keeping it together? And is it time for you to think about what is the next opportunity you can move towards where there's a temperate climate where the cost of keeping your own house air conditioned is not so bad. All right, so that's renting. Renting is a time at which you're like, I'm going it alone. But you're not really going it alone, but at least you're kind of doing it on your own. And now you're starting to feel the pinch of like what it costs to be able to run your own program of scholarship, right? And then number 4 is where you are building your own home. You're like, "Hey, I've been renting for a while, now I'm gonna build my home," and it costs a lot. It costs resources, you're applying for bigger funding, you're looking for more resources. But it's a beautiful thing because you get to create the environment you want. You get to be, you get to, put in all these green energy saving technology that allows you not to feel not to have so much of a gap between like the external temperature and the internal temperature. But what it does take is investment. It takes time. It takes time. It takes investment and it takes time to be able to build your own home in the academic environment. It takes you having a body of work, something you're known for, something people ask you to come and give talks about, something that you're consistently moving forward in the place of funding or in the place of scholarship. You're building it. Takes time and you're doing it. And at the end of it, it is your home. At the end of it, it's your place. At the end of it, it's yours. And it's so, so important. It's so important. But recognize that it really, really takes time. But the beautiful thing is that the moment it's built, that other people are able to come under your umbrella and you're able to set the temperature to a temperature that's conducive for them. You're able to treat your mentees with respect and with honor, and you're able to help them in the way that maybe you weren't helped. You're able to create an environment that encompasses at least a couple of other people, right? It's a home. It's not a city. And that's why number 5 is building a city. And this is where you are saying, okay, I'm going to encompass a couple of homes within my enterprise. And that takes more energy, it takes more investment, but it's an opportunity to grow your footprint in terms of the people that you bring in to an environment that's conducive. to an environment where people are treated with respect, to an environment where people's careers are advanced, where you're not fighting with people over their future and yours. It's an opportunity for you to do more. But it always starts small. It always starts with coming back to where you are. Now, whether you're homeless or whether you have your own, you know, couch in your mentor's home, you do have a space that belongs to you. And it may not be an ideal space, but it's an opportunity for you to set the tone of that space. What is it going to look like around you? How are people going to be treated around you? Are people going to be treated with respect? How are people gonna feel when they come into your program? How do you help mentees advance? How do you make sure you're not taking things from them that they have expectation that they're supposed to have? For example, they wanna be first author and you're like, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm gonna be first author on this one, even though you've done all this work. I don't be" you know what I mean? It's how are you building an environment that helps and heals in a way that you didn't have? In a way that you didn't have that when you were coming up. And maybe you're still there where you're still waiting for your mentors to kind of give you the best of what they have, and maybe they're falling short. And just because you may not have gotten the perfect situation doesn't mean you have to dish it out to other people as well. What kind of environment are you building? And so I say all that to encourage you that you would think about the space you have, and rather than be overwhelmed with all that's going on around you, ask yourself, what is the space I control? And how do I make it conducive for me to thrive? And if I don't have the resources to do that, where can I go to get the resources? Or where else can I go that's going to support me? But I feel like it is our moral imperative to thrive, because when we thrive, other people around us thrive, our environment thrives, we create thriving environments, our patients thrive as well. The work we do matters and we do it joyfully. And so I want to invite you to not accept sadness, anxiety, fear in your environment. I don't want you to accept it as the status quo. And you may say, "Oh, I look around and everybody is this way." Yeah, everybody is outside, they're feeling the same temperature. But there are people you can't see and they're indoors and they pay a big bill, but they are much cooler than the external environment. And I want to invite you to think about, how do you make the environment you're in right now work for you? What will it take? And you may be like, "Oh, I'm leaving in 3 months." You're leaving in 3 months, but there are 3 more months left. How can you make the environment conducive for you while you're still here? So you're not miserable for another 3 months. You're not miserable for another day. And I want to encourage you that it is possible, but it doesn't happen until you decide that you're going to make it happen. And it does take investment. It will cost you, but it's absolutely worth it to live in the environment you absolutely want to live in, the environment that helps you thrive, the environment that helps you be the amazing person that you came to the academy to be. So, 5 things I talked about. You want to be homeless, where you have no mentoring, no community, nothing. You have no plan. And then you're just like the outside temperature, toxicity, all the problems, they just follow you because you're just going with the flow. You want to be in a situation where you actually have a community, where maybe you're crashing on other people's couches or crashing on your mentor's couch, or maybe you even have a room in your mentor's home, or maybe you even have a cottage built for you out back. And that's great. Find mentors, find a community, and enhance your academic experience. And number 3 is getting your own rental, where you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna start fitting the bill for my own place." Number 4 is getting your own home, where you're building it and you're like building a space that encompasses other people and creates an atmosphere where they thrive as well. And finally, you can build your own city, where you're like, "You know what? I'm going all in on this work, the scholarship. I'm getting funding to move it forward, and I'm creating space for other people too to come in and be part of this amazing environment that I'm building." So I invite you to think differently about the status quo, and think about, how can you do it differently where it works for you? And because it works for you, it works for so many other people as well. All right. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. Please share this episode with someone else who needs to hear it. And tell me about what buildings you're building, what you're doing, whether you're renting. I hope you're not homeless, but if you are, I would love to talk to you. Get you a place to sleep, a community to be part of, and whatever it takes for you to thrive. I want to be here for you. I want to support you. Let me do that. All right. Have a great, great rest of your week. And I look forward to you talking with you again. the next time on the Clinician Researcher Podcast.